Agencies Drinking Beer is brought to you by Proposify, software that helps agencies streamline their proposals in the cloud and get faster sign-off.
Welcome to the 5th episode of Agencies Drinking Beer, a podcast where we chat with an agency owner, learn valuable lessons, and get a buzz on. Today we're going to chat with Flynt Johnson from Gravitate, based in Washington, and he's going to tell us about how they've doubled their average project budget 2 years in a row.
I watched a video today of Jimmy Fallon doing Neil Young, and then Neil Young showed up halfway through the song, and I got the shivers. He did a better, like they were saying that he was better than Neil Young. He sounded like Neil Young when Neil Young was younger and could sing.
Yeah, well, Jimmy Fallon does, he does like so many...
He could play guitar.
Yeah.
Amazing.
I know.
Yeah, he's definitely bringing the Tonight Show to a new level.
He's not as good as my Arnold impression from last week.
No, he's not. You're right. Yeah.
But he's pretty good.
Yeah.
He's pretty good.
Okay, so we had a great interview with a guy from Vancouver, which I was really surprised that Vancouver, Washington is older than Vancouver, BC. I didn't know there was a Vancouver, US.
Who cares if it's older? Who cares?
No one cares, but my point is I always thought Vancouver, BC was the Vancouver, and I guess it is.
Yeah.
Because he even admits that, the Vancouver reason is not as sexy and nice as Vancouver, BC.
That's true.
But
the Vancouver, it's like if somebody goes like, oh, well, York out of wherever is the first actual New York.
Can I say something?
Vancouver is Vancouver. Vancouver is an amazing city in Canada. It doesn't matter if you happen to live on Vancouver Street. Vancouver's Vancouver.
I'm really happy to hear you say Vancouver and him say Vancouver, because you talk to people here and you hear it on CBC like Vancouver. I hate that Vancouver.
See, what a lot of people don't realize, and I think a lot of our listeners would probably be American just due to the population size. There is, just like in the U.S., there's many different dialects, many different accents. And, you've got your Boston accent, your New York accent, your California, and your Texas. There is different dialects in Canada. And every American that I've talked to thinks that all Canadians talk alike. They think that we all go like, hey, yeah, we're like Doug and Mackenzie, eh? What's going on, eh? And I probably have a bit of a maritime accent, but it is different than a Toronto accent, which is different than a West Coast, Vancouver, Calgary accent. There's a lot of difference in the accents.
Yeah, I can bring that to a new level. I grew up in southern Maine. And southern Maine is the Miami Beach to Quebec, it used to be. So growing up, everybody thought that really, all my peers, friends, family, everybody in southern Maine thought everybody in Canada was French-Canadian. That's what we just figured. Oh, that's it.
Right. So why don't we move on to the top 3 posts of the week? All right. So the first post I'm going to talk about is called Marketing Psychology: 9 Strategies to Influence Customers. And it's written by Amar Hussain from feinternational.com. I don't know if that's feeinternational.com or FE. I don't know. I'll say FE. Talks about some well-known psychological principles to use in marketing. A lot of these listeners may already be familiar with, but it's worth going over. So one of them is kind of, I would almost say, the backbone of inbound marketing, which is the Reciprocity Principle. The idea that if I do something good for you, you'll do something good for me. So the classic way we think of it in inbound marketing is if I give you a free ebook or infographic or what have you, you'll give me your email address and then I can push out more marketing to you. But that's also used in general sales, right? Is oh, you know, I'll introduce you to so-and-so, or I'll do something nice for you. We see, actually, just, you know, I started watching House of Cards only a few weeks ago on Netflix. And I've noticed that is Frank Underwood, played by Kevin Spacey. That's one of his big tactics is the House whip in Washington is, instead of demanding that people do things or trying to force them to do it, he always gives them something back. Oh, I'll scratch your back, you scratch mine. I'll fund your, charity if you put in your vote to this different, this piece of legislation or whatever. I don't know where I'm going with this, but basically that's the principle behind, reciprocity in marketing. One other one, I'm not going to go through all of them. I'll link to the whole post in the show notes. It's a big post, but one is, it's kind of a classic sales technique, is create scarcity and urgency. Talks about, like Black Friday is so successful because there is that, like, okay, you've got this one day to buy this thing at this price. I mean, you can use that in a lot of your marketing.
Yep.
One that I thought was kind of neat was like create a tribe and an enemy. The psychological thing is that when you put anybody, any human being, even if they're children, you put them in a playground or a large office or an episode of Survivor, people form tribes and they stick together, and those tribes are there to like conquer the other tribes. So the way to use it in marketing talked about how Apple had used, about 10 years ago, they had the Mac PC ads. And they used, hey, we're the cool Mac. If you're a fan of Mac, you're really cool. But PCs, they're really nerdy. Nobody likes them. And it was very successful because they created this like tribe, like clan kind of feeling behind it.
Next post.
The other thing was, so the next post was actually written by one of the founders of MailChimp. And I'm sure all our listeners are very familiar with MailChimp. This was written by Ben Chestnut. I didn't know him before, but he wrote an amazing post on tinyletter.com. And it was called Whale Hunting or Scale Hunting.
Oh, I read that. You sent that to me.
I thought that was really good.
Awesome. Love that post.
Earlier in the post was how he used to run an agency, and they had some big clients that made up a big portion of their business. And even when he was just solely running MailChimp, they had like big clients on MailChimp who ran like $10,000 a month in campaigns, which for SaaS, that's a big amount. That's a large amount of money. Usually in SaaS businesses, usually don't have a company spending $10K a month on you. So the whole post is talking about how when you're an agency, it's very easy to look at like hunting for whales, looking for that big client.
Yep.
And how MailChimp has succeeded. They're entering like 10,000 new users come into MailChimp every day.
It's coming to me now, yeah. That's why,
and they don't care. Like if you happen to be a business that spends 10K or 20K or 100K a month on MailChimp, great. But if you want to leave, they don't care because that still makes up a very tiny percentage of their business. And the key for scalable businesses is to go after scale and not whales.
Yep, that's why I liked it. Yep, because that's
and
what we're
doing.
We've got
pressure in our startup to go after enterprise clients, and we've talked about that internally a lot.
Yeah, one of our funders actually was really high on that.
Exactly. You got to go after enterprise. You got to spend, stuff we were used to in an agency, which was like whining and dining clients for 6 months to get that big contract. We don't want to do it anymore. We want to go after the smaller clients who want to spend $20, $50, $100 a month on us.
Yep.
That's more sustainable.
And how do you handle a funder that says that? You stroke them. Oh, great idea. Yeah, great idea. But you just don't implement it.
That's right. If you happen to be a future funder of Proposify, please ignore everything Kevin just said. We value all of your ideas, and we think you're amazing. The third post we were going to talk about was this was written by, my little man crush, Ben Yoskovitz, and he wrote this really good book called Lean Analytics, and he's been part of, I think, Year One Labs, a startup accelerator. We're just doing the intro.
Hey, wait, actually, let's bring Jonathan in for a second.
I gotta run.
Just say hi really quick. This is our CTO here.
How's it going?
It's going good, eh?
Hey, good, man.
That's what everyone said back in their head.
Yeah.
So Ben wrote a post called Prioritize Product Development by the 4 Stages of Use. And I feel like a lot of the stuff we're talking about is kind of geared towards like product companies like us and not necessarily agencies, but I also think that a lot of agencies work with product companies to try to help them be successful with their products. So I think it's a valuable post to share.
Yeah.
See you, Jonathan.
Yeah, see you, buddy. Have a great
we'll edit
weekend.
this shit out. Maybe.
All right. Have a good one, bud.
All right, later.
Enjoy tonight. See you.
Enjoy that wine. So what Ben is basically talking about is like prioritizing your product development by 4 stages. So he talks about instead of like starting way at the beginning where you say, okay, how are we going to bring traffic to our site? And then how are we going to convert them? Then how are we going to onboard them? And how are we going to retain them? Start at the back and work up. So if you're starting a new product, say a SaaS product especially, start at how do you retain users first. Don't worry about how you bring traffic to the site at the beginning. Focus on can you build something that people want to use and they'll keep using. And then work back from there. How do you onboard them? You know, like we put a lot of effort into our own onboarding. And we tweak it constantly, but what we found sort of seems to work, but we always want to keep tweaking it, which is like when somebody comes to the site and they go, this is what this is a good fit for us. I want to start a trial. What are the steps for them to become a customer? They have to register for a trial. Then they have to, start using the product somehow. They have to build a template. Then they have to send out a proposal. All those different steps. That's part of the first user experience and the onboarding. And then from like the very top of the funnel, how do you actually bring traffic to the site? How do you grow it? So that's one thing we've always done with our product, with our company, is that we tended to like work on everything all at once. But if you wanted to kind of grow faster, and I think if we were to do it again, we would maybe start more focused on the retention first, and then don't even think about marketing until later down the road.
Yeah, and I know that this is targeted towards agencies, and we're talking more about our business. But what's nice is this can help agencies and people listening when they're building products for their clients.
Or for themselves. How many agencies out there want to build their own products?
I'm sure a lot. I know in this city, a lot do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Think about big cities.
Yeah.
Toronto.
Oh, yeah.
New York.
Yeah.
San Francisco. Like, products actually are becoming very integral to agencies. Like, they have to know about SaaS. They have to know about how to growth hack and stuff like that. Like, even if they're not doing it for themselves, doing it for their clients.
Right.
So it's worth talking about.
Definitely.
Well, anyway, that's it. So now we're going to talk with Flynt Johnson from Washington. He's a new business consultant at Gravitate, and he's going to talk to us about how they grow their client base over at Gravitate. Enjoy. All right, I'd like to welcome Flynt Johnson from Gravitate, their digital marketing agency based in Vancouver, Washington. Thanks for being on the show, Flynt.
Glad to be here. This is fun.
Awesome. So you said your Vancouver's better than ours, I remember. Can you clarify that? You said it's older.
Right, not better, just older.
Kevin, older is sometimes better.
Oh, he's always doing that to me. I'm 20 years older than him, and he abuses me constantly.
Oh, I'm right in between you guys, I think. So I can't take sides right now. But yeah, we're the Vancouver in the United States. We're the little brother, little sister to Vancouver, BC, and the little brother, little sister to Portland, which is right across the river. Wow. So we have a very Napoleon complex thing going on over here.
Well, don't worry about it. The whole country of Canada does so to the U.S. So don't worry about it.
Yeah, definitely.
So why don't we start off by just tell us a little bit about what Gravitate does.
Yeah, actually, before I answer that question, I'm just going to make an apology. It is West Coast time here, so not quite where we normally hit beer, but I was going to do it for you guys, and we have a keg in the office. It's kind of like on the checklist of things an agency should have, but it's empty. So I was going to force myself to drink at 11 a.m. for you guys.
We start every day in Atlantic Canada at 10 a.m., so, I mean, come on.
Yeah, isn't this where Duff Man is supposed to jump out?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Duff Man!
Here you go. Yeah, exactly. Okay, so I'll answer your question now. So we're digital. Our tagline is we're digital marketing and design agency. So most of what we do revolves around websites, and kind of the further you get from the website, the less we do it. But there's a lot of things we do that are related to that.
Great. Okay, now I remember. Well, actually, you know what? I do want to talk about something first. A congratulation is in order because you're a new dad.
Yeah, if I stumble a little bit, I might because I didn't sleep last night.
More reason for beer, dude.
Right?
Did you have a boy or girl?
A little boy. He's actually a month old today. 3 hours ago, he turned a month old.
Is it your first child?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, welcome.
Total culture shock.
Welcome to the world.
Yeah, exactly.
Has the color of the feces surprised you yet?
You're gonna have some hot poop talk. Yeah, we have a lot of hot poop talk around the house. We were prepared for it, but there are some, there's a couple times I've called my wife into the changing room and said, "Hey, you should really look at this one before I get rid of it."
It's about the color of Kevin's shirt that he's wearing today. We're gonna send a picture. Put the picture on the post.
I couldn't eat guacamole for 2 years after that experience.
My wife has her kid on a probiotic, and I'm all for it, by the way. But the probiotic also put some interesting little colors in there. So,
Our
it's some greens
listenership
and
is
blues.
dropping by the second.
Yeah, we should probably talk about something that people who care about agencies care about.
Okay, one thing I want to know from you, because you're a new business consultant, or as we used to say, the agency lingo would be BD guy. Mm-hmm. So actually, that's Kevin was our BD guy.
Hey, can I sell you something?
Over at Headspace. So tell me a little bit about your role. So you're primarily bringing new clients into the agency.
Yeah, I mean, we sort of chafe a little bit at some of the salesy terms because we want to not be those people.
Yeah.
But we do think it's really nice in a company of our size to have a role like that, who basically is protecting our producers. So our designers can design, our account managers can worry about their accounts, our developers can do their development. We might pull them in, when we can, given their schedules, but they don't have to deal with drifting, sort of sorting through the group of crazy people that contact you or the contacts that don't go anywhere. And then also it's nice to have somebody who has all of those things in mind, right? So a developer might say, oh, we need more hours for this. And a designer might say, this one's going to be tough. And we need sort of an arbiter between all of those to make sure that it's a balanced plan when we put it together.
Are you doing like account management, project management in addition to kind of the new business proposal stuff, or do you leave that to somebody else too?
We do give it to somebody else once it gets. I always say you get to the smart people after you're done with me, and it's we're not a huge company, so there's I'm sort of managing one project right now, but that's really the exception to the rule.
Yeah, it's so interesting with agencies too, right? Because you can't. The role of the salesperson, which of course you don't want to be called a salesperson, nobody does, but there is that kind of relationship with agencies where you want to sell without selling, or at least make it seem like you're not selling. It's more relationship building. You can't just bring in new business into an agency by slamming the phones or just cold calling prospects. There's a lot more to it, right?
Yeah, I mean, we're really lucky in the sense that we really put time and effort into marketing ourselves. And so most of the people who we're talking to either find us or are referred to us, right? Unfortunately, what that means is, somebody might have the idea for the next Facebook, or they're just a small business just starting out and they call me up and I have to, I tell most people we're not a good fit and try and treat them really nicely and send them on their way and maybe refer them to somebody else if that's appropriate. So we really do get to focus on the ones that we want to work with. We get to be choosy at this point, I guess is what I'm saying. And that's a really good position to be. Yeah, exactly.
I stole the words right from your mouth.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, there is a lot of saying no, isn't it? Because you can't work. It's not a volume business, and you can't take everybody who comes your way.
And the wrong client can ruin your team's mindset for 6 months, or longer. And, that people, typically clients who you're not a good fit with, also you do worse work. They don't trust you. You get pissed off at them, right? Maybe you don't put in the extra couple hours you would have if you were in love with a client, and nobody's happy at the end. So you just don't want that. You don't want to just that whole sort of, what is it, sell them and forget them, the thing that a lot of salespeople are sort of known for. We want to go completely the opposite way. If anything, sometimes I'm going to our president and saying, so these guys seem like they could be a good fit, but I don't know. I have this one concern. Should we bring them in? And we have that conversation a lot, actually. He makes fun of me for coming in and asking that question so much.
What is your criteria for what makes a good lead? Like, what are the things where you say, I have to tell this person no, they wouldn't be a good fit?
I wish it was more than budget and timeline, but those are the first two every time. Who's the guy who? There's a quote that I throw in every now and again. Mike Montero said it, I think.
I love him.
Yeah, he's amazing. Great Twitter follow, by the way. But he said at one point, essentially, every project has a list of constraints, and budget is the biggest one. And so you don't want to have that conversation if you don't have to. But at some point, you need to say, listen, are we close to where you guys are considering, or are we in a way higher or way lower? In which case, maybe you should talk to somebody else.
So budget and timeline, those are the kind of the big red flags. Is if somebody just they want to build Facebook in a week or whatever, they don't have the money to build it. Is there anything else, like maybe the way that the vibe you get from them when you first talk to them on the phone, or you have that first kind of consultation where or even if it's not just the person itself, but even just the type of business they run, that you're like, that's not really a good fit. So assuming the budget and timeline is fine, are there any other red flags that you look for to kind of decide whether or not they'd be a good fit for Gravitate?
Yeah, definitely. Like I said, I felt I would be irresponsible if I didn't name those other two, but those are the least fun ones to talk about, right? It's really a group of things. And a lot of times, you have your ideal client and you get a certain number of those, and you have people who are pretty good clients. And the ideal client, right away, they get what you do and you get what they do, and it seems like a fun project. And so those aren't the worry. It's the one that's kind of in that middle ground there where you're trying to figure out who they are. And it really, for us, a lot of times it comes down to, we tell them the story of what they do, of what we do, and either they get it right away or they don't. If they don't get it, and that might sound pretentious or something, but if they don't get it, then we're going to be fighting with them the whole way through. If we feel like they're saying, we hear what you're saying, but we want you to, I don't know, design it this way, or we think the content should look like this, or whatever the question is that we're there to help them with, we realize that we're just going to be butting heads with them for a long time. So that's a huge red flag. Like I said before, trust is, our best clients are the ones that trusted us the most, even at smaller budgets. We may have a small budget project, client trusted us, the project came out awesome. We may have a huge budget project, and there's one client I'm thinking of had a marketing department bigger than our company, and they just sort of couldn't make a decision because there's 40 people weighing in on everything, and it just kind of went to crap. Well, not naming names.
Yeah, I mean, if I could contribute a red flag or a sort of, something to add to the checklist, it would be how many decision makers are on the project, because design by committee, as we all know, is a nightmare.
Yeah, that's a question we ask every time, and we sort of make fun of ourselves with our clients because I ask it. We may have a follow-up meeting. We ask it again. We have a series of sort of get-to-know-you meetings once we actually start working with someone, and the account manager will ask it, the designer will ask it. So we want to be
by
really,
the end of
really
it, the
clear.
client's like, "No, we're not a committee, for God's sake."
Exactly, and so we just say, we've been burned, and it makes it harder. So we want to make sure we're clear.
Hey, Flint, Kevin here. Question I have is, do you guys respond to RFPs?
I've been listening back through your podcast, and I heard you guys say you don't, and we do. I actually have a post I wrote a while back about how to write a good RFP. We've gotten great clients from RFPs, but we also say no to a lot of them. There's a number of reasons for that. But the main one is a lot of times an RFP has no focus at all on having a great project. Like, that is not the goal of an RFP. And if it's not the goal of an RFP, you did it wrong, essentially. Yeah. So if it's about, I've got to ask you 1,000 questions about your agency and tell me your philosophy about this, and we've had some that want to look at our books right?
Oh no.
You know, and you're just, you know, and I've seen them that it's just completely pulled off of a template and they haven't really put any thought into it. So all of those are huge red flags. And then kind of like the next level down is there's a lot of times where they're giving you all the solutions, and we feel like, great, if you have all the solutions in mind, why are you hiring us?
Yeah.
Like, if you know how to design your site, please go do it. That's great. If you want somebody to help you. Exactly.
We actually live in a very small province, less than 1 million people, and we used to we would respond to some, but Kyle and I, when we had the agency, we were pretty good at finding the ones or understanding the ones that actually were from say government organizations that already knew who they were going to hire. You could tell that they already had someone in mind, but they were just going through the motions.
Right. The other rule that we tend to have is if they won't get on the phone with us, we won't respond.
Yeah, that's a good.
That's great. Yes.
And they're necessary evil. We don't respond to them, just like I'm sure you don't, because you want to, but it's the only way to get the work sometimes.
You know what? And the flip side of that is sometimes they're great. Sometimes someone has given you a really concise view into their organization, 4 or 5 pages. It's a great preview of what's happening. They're looking for someone to help provide solutions, and they can be fantastic if they're done right. They just tend not to be.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the better approach, isn't it, to have a relationship with the client beforehand, and then get all those answers before they hire you. You know, it's not just getting put on a tender website and they're getting 100 replies that you've got to compete with.
Yeah, that's the other thing. We often won't reply if there's a long list of people that they have on the RFP list.
Yeah. Now, one thing that I wanted to talk about was you talked about how the agency you're in, that you guys doubled your average project amount. You know, how much every project is worth. You doubled it over the course of the last couple of years. How did you do that?
Yeah, it's actually a little bit more complicated than that without getting too mathy. It is sort of what I do at work all day, so I think about this stuff. But we have been growing at about 20% per year. That's right where we want to be. You know, when you grow faster than that, you lose a client, you might have to fire somebody, right? So we don't want to do that. Nice, steady growth. Yep. Within that, we've been increasing our projects, which is, so essentially you call us, you want a website. 2 years in a row, the cost of that website is at minimum doubled, right? So like 1 year, I don't know if I should probably throw out numbers, but you know, 1 year it was one amount, it was double the year next year, and it was double the year after that, and it might happen again. But I think the more interesting story is we've been doing that growth while also trimming our client list incredibly. So we've gone from, at some points we'd be over 100 clients. Now we're around 40. You know, 30 to 40, you know, and we're doing more business with less clients. We can do better work for them. They're happier. We're not trying to change mindset over and over again. And so like doing all of those at once is kind of the interesting thing from my perspective.
And do you find that because you're doing mostly project-based work, and it's mostly websites, so you build the website for them, you launch it, and then what's the retention like? Or do clients stay on sort of to get you to tweak and improve it over time, or is that something that you as the new business person need to kind of do, is reach back out to clients and, you know, get new projects out of them?
Yeah, actually that's something, I guess I sort of described it oddly because it's easier to think about a website project sometimes, but I would love to. I was listening to your podcast with Scott from Infidus. Yeah. And he was talking about how nobody buys in on the retainer concept. And essentially that's what we do. So our pitch is something like, do you just do marketing once? You know, is it something you do and then you're done with it? Or is it a living thing? Do you build a site and then let it sit up for 3 years and sort of degrade and then start over? Or do you work on it constantly? And which, you know, when you look at the successful companies out there, they all work on them constantly. And honest, you know, that's the way we've always treated our own site. So about 4 years ago, all we were doing was projects. At the same time, we were marketing ourselves completely differently than what we were recommending our clients do. So we've now said, wait a minute, that's weird. Let's recommend them the path that's really worked for us. And again, that's that sort of conversation where you tell them that, and either they get it or they don't. If they say, wait a minute, what are you talking about? We just need a site, and then that's going to be it. We say, okay, well, we may not be the best fit. We can still talk about it and see if there's a project here, because we do about 20% project work. But you kind of know that, I hate to say it, they're sort of setting themselves up for failure by thinking about it that way.
Oh, of course, yeah. It's just impossible to produce a perfect website the first time you launch it. It doesn't work that way.
Yeah, exactly. And even if you did produce it, let's say you could, everybody's going to catch up with you 2 months later or a year later, and you need to be keeping up with everybody else as well. So there's no, because time's a factor there too.
One thing that I've always really thought about was how too many organizations, especially government, I hate to say, they're typically the ones putting out the RFPs, or the government organizations. And they always look at websites as something they need to check off their corporate mandate or their annual budget. Okay, we've budgeted this much for a website, and once it's done, we won't touch it again for 5 years. They don't understand that it's an ongoing investment to get results. Is that something that you kind of educate them about early on in the sales process?
Yeah, and the thing is, and we've been discussing this quite a bit internally, but our feeling is if you have to tell them why it's important for too long, it's just not going to work. If you got to say, no, really, you need to do this, it's important, you should be thinking about it this way, eventually you just sound whiny and you're not really providing any value. Now, if you say why and they say, okay, that sounds really interesting, and you say, well, here's how we're going to do it, you spend most of your time on how you do it, now that's an interesting conversation. And now you're getting into learning more about their organization, because they say, oh, that's interesting, you do that. That would fit really well with us in this way. And we have this question. And so you have a total different level of engagement. But they have to understand the why first. If they don't understand the why, it's kind of a lost cause.
Mm-hmm. Now, what do you attribute to the growth? So you had kind of had some tips in mind, I think, that you sent through that you wanted to talk about, that you can sort of put around, here's how Gravitate has grown so steadily over the last couple of years. What would you sort of put out to the listeners as far as how they could do the same for their own agencies?
Yeah, so I think there's a few things that I would think of. I don't want to do a best of list or anything like that. But
oh, come on, that's what we want. Give us what we want.
Yeah, we'll count them down from number 10.
I want a top 7 list.
So there's a couple things. One of them, and this kind of goes back to my role a little bit. I worked in creative industries for a long time, and I am an okay creative, right? I can get around in Photoshop and do some stuff. I can, I take some photography. I've done radio in the past. But what I realized working in those industries is a lot of people who are really good at it don't want to worry about the money.
Yes.
And they don't want to be invested in that side of it. So it is really nice. We have a really good partnership at our company between our president's an engineer, right? So he is thinking bottom line, how is this business going to work, and making decisions based off of that. Then we have a ton of creative people on the other side, and he's creative as well, but it's statistical. A lot of it is where it comes from. And then the creative side can say, okay, we're pushing back in this other direction. And that tension is really, really helpful because too many companies just forget the business part of it. So that's the first thing. The next thing I think is, and this is I can talk till I'm blue in the face about the stuff I do to maybe help bring in clients, and that's all kind of fine and good, but you just have to do good work. So if you have somebody, you kind of always need to be a little bit above your pay grade in a way. If somebody's paying you for a $2,000 site, you just got out of college, you try and make a $5,000 site, right? If you're getting paid $5,000, you try and make them look like they're 7 or 10. And for a couple of reasons. One, because you're pushing yourself, and the other is because you want that better client eventually. And so I can't take credit for any of that, right? I can bring in a good client or not, but really most of what I'm doing is saying, look at these clients over here. Do they look good to you? We can do something like that. And that's all credit to our designers and developers and digital strategists and all the rest of our team. So,
so just a sec there, you're saying, because I didn't understand it at first, but I might be half drunk.
Mm-hmm.
So you're saying, okay, a client's got, let's say, a $5,000 budget. It's the work that makes them looks like a $10,000 website.
Yeah, and not only that, but you're just putting a deeper level of thought that's making you better.
Yeah.
So you're constantly getting better by saying, I know I could just do this, but I'm going to put in a couple extra hours here and do something more interesting. And, that's one side of it. The other side is I'm going to make something that's really effective. So this client down the road is saying, wow, everything I said I want the website to do in terms of, I don't know, leads, let's say, is happening. Okay, great. Matter of fact, you're exceeding my expectations. Those sorts of things are, so vital to getting other clients, because referrals are so much better than somebody coming in off the street.
Yep.
I'm not breaking any ground there.
Yeah, I mean, that's in a way it's kind of a trap that it's such a referral based business.
Yeah.
Because one thing that's been refreshing for Kevin and I with Proposify is how it's just such a different type of company than an agency, where you can take on as much as you possibly can, as long as the product can retain users. It's as much traffic as you want to bring to the door. Those could be potential customers. But there's such a balance with an agency where it's hard to get to the sweet spot, right? Like you either don't have enough leads or enough proposals in the pipeline, and you're worried about having enough work for the team, or on the opposite end, the team is completely slammed, and then new leads are coming to the door, and you're saying like, we can't touch your project for a month or 2 or 3. Like how do you get to the sweet spot, or is that possible?
Yeah, I think you're always, it's a journey, right? Not a destination. Actually, I was going to ask you guys that, because I'm curious, I don't know much about your previous agency, but I know you've basically gone from selling a service to selling a product. Mm-hmm. And I'm sure all the expertise you built giving clients that service is really helping you with that product. But how has that transition been for you? Does it feel really natural, or does it feel odd? Do you feel safer in that environment?
We feel a lot safer.
It just feels good, man. I'm telling you,
I think we were burnt out.
Yeah.
Of the agency.
We had been in the agency world for a long time. Actually, we met at another agency before we started our own, and we feel like we've lived it, we know it. So it was a natural progression, really. If you think of it that way. We kind of know what you're going through and what agencies are going through when it comes to writing proposals.
Well, and also I don't want to, turn this around and talk too much about ourselves, but I think that for a long time with the agency, we were kind of a struggling product business. We were a service business that wanted to be a product business for a long time, and I think you can only do one or the other really well. So we got to the crossroads where we said, we can't keep trying to do in-house products and try to grow the agency and make it successful. We have to kind of shit or get off the pot. And
right.
So ultimately we just decided to sell the agency and focus on the product, which, we believed in. But that's basically it. I think there are ways to do service really, really well if you're focused on it. But man, it takes a lot of dedication and a lot of focus.
It's funny. We kind of went the other way with the same issue. Because we were doing websites, right? And a lot of our clients, when we were doing them as projects, just thought of them as a commodity. And so here's this thing that I need. It's going to exist. It's like printing a brochure or something. And we were upset with that model. It is a service model, but to them, you're creating a product for them, right? Mm-hmm. And so we doubled down on service and said, well, this is a weird path. It would make more sense to literally have this be a service and have this be something where we're participating long-term, building a better relationship, providing more value over time. And it's just funny because you guys went the other way, and I totally get why you did, right?
Yeah.
And we're sort of like veering the other direction.
Well, service is kind of a cushion too, right? Like any kind of product business, it takes a long time to get your product to a point where people will pay for it, and they'll pay for it in volume. Mm-hmm. So like service, it's not that hard really with a service to make, $50,000, but to get your product to the point where it's making $50,000 every month, that takes a lot longer. It's not as, not to say the service is easy, but if you've got enough hustle, you can kind of go and get a project for a pretty decent chunk of change and do it and make some money, but the product just takes a much longer investment for sure.
Yeah, I could see. It's funny. Like my job is talking to people in different businesses and learning about their business, and it actually fascinates me. Right, that's part of the reason why I think I've done okay here. Is that I'm really interested in, especially somebody who has a niche business I never would have thought of. I don't know if I'd care to talk to somebody from Coca-Cola about their marketing. They might be really smart, but it's, you know,
I don't know,
what
when they
difference
write
are
that
you going to make
check
for them?
you, you'll be pretty happy.
Yeah, I don't know if we want to work with those kinds of people, honestly. I think we like, you feel like you can make a difference for a mid-sized business or an up-and-coming kind of business. And Coca-Cola, we would just be a different vendor. They'd switch from somebody to us, and then maybe they'd switch from us to someone else, right? It just doesn't, they don't care. And we're in locally to us, we've got some fairly big names. I mean, Nike is headquartered here, Adidas is headquartered here, Intel. And a lot of those companies, because people want to work for them so much, just play agencies against each other and basically whittle people down to the rock bottom price a lot of times, and then they don't care about you. You know, they essentially, you talk about design by committee, like you're dealing with all committees and a chain of people there, not a single person. So we like working with smaller businesses. We feel like we can take a small business and transform the way that they're being viewed and the way that they're, business, where we actually change the amount of business they're bringing in. And Coca-Cola, we just can't move a needle like that.
Yeah, I think also, I know some of the agencies in this area that have had large clients like the telecoms and whatnot, they ramp up because they get the project, and then next thing you know, 2 years go by and they decide to switch to another vendor. Like you said, they really don't care, and now they have to lay off half their team.
Right. Exactly. And we want to avoid that. In an ideal world, if we have 40 clients, each one is 1/40th of our income, you're never going to get there. But you don't want any one client that is your only bread and butter, because it's just a bad model. I mean, you may as well be working for them, right?
On the other side of the coin, especially when you run a small agency, the idea of having a big Fortune 500, Fortune 1000 client, I mean, there's some prestige to it that if you can get their logo on your site as a client, you might have just been like designing a bathroom sign for their employees, but because you can put Coca-Cola and Nike and Adidas on your website, all of a sudden the perception of your agency is different now. Oh, they're working with those guys.
Yeah, I'm so jaded. If I see somebody with just a logo on their website, but not what they did for them, it smells BS to me, right? I just think, yeah, but did the bathroom sign? I think you did the bathroom signs, or some employee used to work there and they moved to your company or something.
It was a beautiful bathroom sign.
Oh my God, best bathroom sign ever. It was like, there's a men's and a women's, and then it's like there's a trans, because we're, at a very progressive company. Yeah.
That's right.
While I was pinching that loaf, I really made me want to buy their product.
Right. Nice. Just do it.
Interesting. So yeah, I mean, I think we all get caught up in that. Or if you run an agency, I think there's always that little part of you that would want to have those big name logos on your site. I mean, I'll admit it. I wanted them.
Oh,
I don't think we really got them.
Yeah, believe me, when
ones like
we get
tourism
but not Coke.
No, we had some pretty big regional, tourism industry association for a province, or we had some decent ones for the size of agency we were, but we never had a Coke like Kyle said. Yeah, I mean, definitely not.
Oh man, I just had a Flint moment where I just blanked out. I was just gonna say something.
Usually he looks at me and says a senior moment, but I'm glad it's changed to a Flint moment now.
I'm not.
It's now a new dad moment.
Yeah, it's a new dad moment. That's better.
Well,
yeah, I'll take that.
I guess what I was gonna say was sometimes, and I've actually felt this the same when I was doing a lot of consulting and a lot of especially UX consulting, was saying no is one of the best things you can do for a client, because when they're used to if it's the kind of client where they just want you to jump when they say jump, and that they think that's what I'm paying you to do, it's never going to work out. But when sometimes the clients start out that way, but then when you actually kind of show a bit of a backbone and say no to them, this is a terrible way to do it, and here's why, they respect you more, and it sets the tone for the rest of the relationship.
Yeah, and we want to be driving the project or service agreement, whatever it is. We want to be in the driver's seat for the stuff that we're good at. And so developing that trust is absolutely required for that, and being willing to have a relationship where you can say no nicely or recommend something else. And a lot of times it's something like, well, you're the client. At the end of the day, if you demand it to be this way, we will do it, but we're recommending against it, and here's why. So they still feel like they have some control, but at the same time, they're developing some trust that you're not just going to sit there and take it or do whatever they say, because that's really a bad model.
But think about this. I mean, why is it when you bring your car in and your mechanic works on it, you're not saying, you know something, I think you should torque the brakes like this, and I think maybe the engine, we don't ask questions. It's just like with us. They hire us for a job, for our expertise, and for some reason in this industry, the agency industry, people love to interject. They love to add their 2 cents when it's good to have their feedback, of course, but at the end of the day, we do what we do because we become experts at it, and we try to help them, right?
Yeah, I feel like this is the kind of thing that goes on the list of complaints from agencies. That everyone has the same list. Yeah. Hey, the logo's too big, and you're like, or not big enough, and you're like, well, the reason why we did that, like, we almost could have a canned response for some of those.
And send them the "Make My Logo Bigger" cream video.
Yeah, exactly.
Ever seen that?
Yeah, and then there was somebody who made a bunch of posters just based on feedback they always heard from clients. Can you make this redder? That kind of thing.
Yeah.
But I'd say the other thing that we do that sort of like dovetails with that is we have a really, not a firm process because we're not inflexible, but we have a really clear process that we bring up right away that defines when clients might see stuff and how we make decisions. And that's also really helped us because we don't say you're going to hire us today. We'll give you a comp of the homepage tomorrow. We say this is how we get to that, and this is what's important. And that's also really helped develop that trust. And also, again, either they get it or they don't. And if they don't get it, it's good to know that early on instead of trying to convince them as you're working with them.
Be very far down the road of a project before you realize they're a nightmare. This is never going to launch.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Do you guys ever struggle with getting content from clients?
Yeah, actually, we've done better. If I can plug another agency, actually, there's a British company called Gather Content that we use now.
Oh yeah, we know them. They're awesome, eh?
Yeah, you can even I can plug up a sub plug. Our creative director did a podcast for them, a webinar a while back that you can look up that defines the process I was just talking about. So if anyone's curious to know more about that, go check out Gather Content. But
We're
they
gonna
did
link
help.
to that in the show notes.
Yeah, I can send that to you if you want.
I looked at it today actually, and that'll be in the show notes.
You do research and whatnot. Good job.
I try. I'm trying to get attain journalistic integrity. I don't know how I'm doing with it, but I'm trying.
Kyle's in his element, man. He's good at this. I'm loving watching him.
What was I going to say? Oh, so yes, we struggle. Yes, gather content has helped. But honestly, content is just becoming more and more important for us month over month. So we keep changing and adapting our process. We're including content creation in basically every engagement now. It might just be some sample content. It might be we're writing entire a brochure or a website or something for someone. But we found that it just seems to go better. The more we can participate in that process, the better our project's going to go, or a happier client's going to be.
I actually wrote a guest post for Gather Content last year called "Don't Let Your Clients Write the Content."
Perfect.
And it was all about that. That's one thing I would do differently now if I was selling a website was instead of making like content creation or copywriting its own line item, I would just bury it in the cost and force them to do it. You don't have a choice. You can't opt out.
We kind of did that only for, we say basically 3 to 5 pages of content we're going to write, right? And then once they see that, sometimes a client will just decide they want more, or sometimes that'll be enough to help them do it. But yeah, I totally agree. It's hard for us because we're already often a client's coming to us and we're saying no to a few things, and we're saying I don't think this is a good idea, or they're saying they send us an RFP and we say we understand this is the solution you're looking for. We're telling you this is what we think you should do. So sometimes also fighting the content battle, it's a little tough, and so it's sometimes we'll hold that off. We'll talk about it. We'll make sure that it's brought up as a point, and we'll include some in the initial web project that we're doing, and maybe some later. But it is it's just hard to do too much of that, too much education. It gets difficult.
Well, I mean, the other thing too is even if the client agrees to, let's say they've got great writers on staff and they provide you content, if it's not early, if it's not in the design phase, it affects the design so much,
So did you guys do content centered or content focused design at your agency?
We tried to.
Mm-hmm.
Well, anytime we could get content up front, it would always make for the project would always be better. Like anytime we were designing with lorem ipsum, and the client would approve mock-ups with lorem ipsum, and then we would build in the CMS and build everything, and then the client would just like send 2 lines of copy for the about page. That it was always just a struggle. Early on in the project, it was always fairly smooth getting the designs approved, but then once you got to like the nuts and bolts of let's launch this thing, that was when it was almost like an iceberg. Like that's where the real work is, under the surface.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. And one of the things that we've done to try and curtail that is really robust content strategy. So if the client doesn't have the budget to have us write a lot, we have every page of the site. We know the audience it's directed at, the type of content that should be on there. Photos, videos, bullet lists, paragraphs, whatever those are, we've got that all pretty well laid out, and also size. This should be 200 words. This should be about 6 to 10 bullets, that sort of thing. And so that helps a lot, because if they do need to write, they're writing for a very specific thing. But even after we did all that, writing some content is proving to be really helpful. And so it's, as I said, it just keeps growing as a part of our business because it's just so important. You make this great design, and if the content's just okay, and the design is basically trying to present the content in the best way that is possible, you've sort of like you're driving your car with a flat tire or something.
Yeah, I think Jeffrey Zeldman has a good quote around that about how design without content is just decoration. It's not design.
Yeah, we pull that one out every now and again.
Yeah, you always got to have your Zeldman quotes around. Listen, Flint, I could talk with you for much longer, but I think our time is up for the interview. I want to thank you for being on today.
Yeah, this was great. This is really fun. I always like hearing what other, I know you guys aren't an agency anymore, but what other businesses are doing and people with experience. And I've actually gotten a kick out of listening to your other podcast.
Oh, good. That's awesome. I mean, we're early days. You'll be episode 5. So, we hope to be doing this for, a long time to come. And I hope you'll be on again in the future.
Yeah, I'd love to. And, maybe even we could have a different perspective at some point too from our company, if that was something you were interested in. Because I think I actually expected you guys to be doing more talking really specifically about sort of the sales cycle, because Proposify, right? That's what you expect. And the fact that you have a broader conversation, I think is awesome. So it's really great to hear.
There's a big reason we do that, and that's because proposals aren't interesting. Like we're providing a service that helps take the pain away from proposals, but ultimately, like, you as a salesperson, and I know we don't like to be called a salesperson, but I mean essentially your new business is your role. Do you wake up in the morning and feel excited to get out of bed to write that next proposal?
Exactly. Yeah, you don't even need to answer that question. And I'll tell you the other thing: our best clients will often sign a 2-page proposal. And the ones that are really borderline, it might be 30. It's just how it works. The people who, the people who get it, it's a really easy relationship, and they say, this is all you need to know, and we're ready to get going. And everybody, another client might want to nitpick everything, take a month to negotiate it, and you've ground your teeth off by the end. So believe me, if I can get away from it, I can.
What's interesting is I remember when we had the prototype and we'd go to a demo or go do a pitch, for example. And the few people ahead of us were curing cancer, helping the environment with oil spills, doing all this sexy stuff that's saving lives in the environment. And there's us. Hey, we know ways to, help you with proposals. And, it's not sexy. It's not interesting. But the funny thing is, we would get people that would come up to us after and say, oh, my God. It's like we invented ice cream. I mean, they're just
right.
Like, you can help us with proposals? I mean, amazing, and it's such a pain point for so many people.
Yes, you guys are in a smart industry, not to kiss up, but I think that is, you guys have a smart business model from what I can see.
But, the thing is, I still, even though I wouldn't want to run an agency again for a while, maybe 10 years down the road, who knows, maybe. But it's, what I still like doing is talking to people like yourself who are in the trenches, I know it's a great business and it can be a lucrative business, but it's also a really challenging business. And I love talking to people like yourself who are overcoming those challenges and building great businesses.
And I was the BD guy, so I love it. I've always been a BD guy most of my career, in multiple industries.
Well, thanks again, Flint. We'll sign off for now, but you've got a company function to run to anyway, don't you? Or did that happen already?
That was this morning.
Oh,
we had our big quarterly meeting, and it was a lot of fun.
Awesome.
And I mean that.
Now you need to go fill that empty beer keg.
I have a proposal to write this very afternoon, I'm sorry to say.
There you go.
Between changing diapers, right?
Exactly.
Well, congratulations again. That's awesome.
Thank you so much. This has been a lot of fun.
Awesome. Thanks, Flint.
Yeah, take care.
All right.
Have a great weekend.
All right.
You too.
Bye.
Bye.
That was a good interview. What do you think of that?
Oh, it was awesome.
You say that every week.
I can't help
When
it.
have we had a bad interview?
I would tell you if we had a bad interview.
Would you?
I would absolutely.
On the air.
Yeah, I would.
All right.
Yeah, I
All
would.
right.
Yep.
It was a good interview with Flint. I liked him.
Yeah, I did too.
He knows his shit.
He does. He nailed it. He's nice. He's got a pinky puppet.
I have a finger puppet that I'm using.
You scare me sometimes, bro.
I got this from the IWK, the Children's Hospital, where I had tie-in for a little.
But you realize it was
surgery.
it was for him.
It was for him, but it also
Brought it
entertains
to the
me.
office.
It entertains me.
Well, I'm glad.
Smiling.
Can you put a picture of that on the post?
Yeah, I'll do that.
Okay, good. So no, Flint was great. He's a BD guy like myself, so I could really relate to him.
Yeah, Captain Sales.
Yeah, that's why I liked it.
You like Captain
yeah,
Sales?
I did. That guy was straight ahead. He said it how it was. Man, that's what I like.
I would say it'd be the hardest job in an agency.
It is.
Because if you're a designer, you're a developer, you're a project manager, you know your shit, you know what you're doing, but like BD is just like sales.
Well,
changes constantly.
Like he said, he needs to know everything about everything.
Yeah.
In a sense. I mean, just like I
Clients
did.
look to them,
yeah.
right?
I remember I
Look
used to
you.
have to know just enough high level about everything that we did in the agency to sell it, and then bring in the big guns like yourself once we get down to the nitty gritty.
Well, you're not just talking about my biceps, I hope.
No.
All right. Well, that was a great episode. Thanks for listening, and we're going to go out with a joke. I'm just looking through my Feedly, and I see some like funny headlines from The Onion. Does that count?
Yes, it does. Let it rip.
Bouncer instructed not to let people like himself in. I thought that was great.
Oh my god. So he had to bounce himself out.
He had to bounce himself out. If you're like you, don't let yourself in. I thought that was good. Anyway, whatever. Let's wrap this shit up.
Let's do it.
That was a good interview. I think it'll be interesting, especially if you're interested in business for your agency.
Who isn't?
Who isn't? Some owners struggle with that, though. They're good at design, they're good at development, but they're not great at sales.
They go in with their heart, not their head. This guy's got it down.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Adios, everyone.
Have a great weekend.
See ya.
Goodbye.